Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here, and welcome to the Wealth Holders Podcast. Now, this is not the full interview. For the full interview, link below, thewealthholderspodcast.ca, where it includes the full interview, including the vault segment, which is my favorite segment. It's mentorship-like questions, and I gain a ton of value from them. So go to the link. If you want to stick around YouTube, that's fine. Just make sure to like, subscribe, and share to get it out into the YouTube universe. Thanks. Enjoy. Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here at the Wealth Holders Podcast, and today I'm joined with Tara Christie. She is the CEO of Banyan Gold, ticker symbol BYN, on the TSXV. It's a gold exploration company working within the Yukon. Tara, thanks for joining me today, and where are you calling in from?
I'm actually in BC today, British Columbia. I was up in Yukon last week.
Okay, so how many months of the year are you working up north?
You know, we have a pretty unique project because we have such great infrastructure, highways. So we started in February, our drill program, and we ended last year in December 15th. And with the financing that we just announced, the first closing of the tranche 1 today, we plan to drill through December again, just like we did last year.
Okay, but are you in, do you go to the Yukon often, or how many months of the year do you go, or you back
I
and
still
forth?
have the home both in Whitehorse and in the nearest community of Mayo. So, you know, pre-COVID, I was probably there, half time, particularly in the summer exploration months. Last year, it was a lot less. And this year, it's probably down to, I'll probably spend a month of this year up there. So I used to be a lot more operationally involved, but
Right.
now I've hired some really great people. And with all the modern communication that we have, I don't need to be there on site anymore to be really part of helping Banyan really decide on its next steps and make critical decisions. So not there quite as much. I definitely miss it though. That once you have that gold bug and you're out doing exploration, it's with you forever.
Pretty exciting. So, Tara, I always like starting off the interview asking the same question. What were you doing when you were my age? I'm 25 years old. So, what were you doing from 20 to 25?
So I was working at a placer mine. I was doing my bachelor's and my master's degree in geotechnical engineering. Originally, though, when I went to university, I thought I was going to be in the medical profession, maybe a biomedical engineer or doctor. And then in second year engineering, I switched, and I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be a civil but ended up going into geotechnical, which kind of spans geology, mining, and civil engineering, and found that I loved it. At the same time, I was spending my summers working up at a placer mine, running loaders, excavators, being the camp cook, running, that was how I paid my way through, was really in exploration and mining.
How'd you like the field work?
I loved it. I grew up, my father's a geologist, and, first started going out in the field as soon as I was old enough to carry a backpack. And, by 14, I was, doing shifts, and it was just our life too. Like, it's what we grew up with. So
Right.
it definitely gets in your blood.
Yeah. Yeah. Mining's in your blood, right? You guys, your family actually, didn't they purchase the AurMac property, was it back in 2013?
So the
Or
placer right underneath a part of it. So as part of an estate sale. So my family's been in placer mining, and I spent 20 years running a large scale alluvial placer mining operation. As part of one of our purchases of land, we got that, which is different rights. So the AurMac property that Banyan owns is the quartz rights, which is the hard rock. But
okay.
often, you find placers right next to deposits that are in the hard rock. So, they've been eroded and deposited in the nearby sediments and streams. And that's why they're there, is that there's a hard rock source nearby.
Okay. Okay.
So it's like a soil anomaly, except for it's contained within sediments in the stream.
Right. That makes sense.
Hmm.
So you said you were, it was for 10 years you were president for a privately run mining company, right? What kind of skills did you learn there, and are they very transferable to be in a publicly traded exploration company?
Absolutely. That was really the basis of my understanding all aspects of the business, everything from hiring people and payroll and employment rules through to permitting and compliance with permit and applying for permits and environmental assessment to, the actual operational parts of it, how to be efficient, what you need to do, how you plan. Particularly since it was in the north, we operated sometimes starting in February, then sometimes through to November. So having to deal with the very cold seasons and winter operations all the way through summer. So really a broad range of experience, which I think set me up well for a public company. And particularly, you'll find that our company is very fiscally prudent. We spend shareholders' dollars well, very efficiently. I still have that same mindset of private company. Would I spend my private money on this? And can I get a better deal? Certainly there's other aspects now running a public company. You have to make sure you're procuring from the community and hiring First Nation businesses and working with the community, but you can still do all of that efficiently. So those skill sets, and then the capital markets part was really the piece that I had to learn, but I'd been learning that from about 2006 when I first joined my first public company board. And now looking back, I can see just how much more there is to learn. And personally, I just like to learn something new every day anyway.
Yeah, me too. That's why I do this podcast. So do you believe in the yellow metal? Are you a gold bug? Because it sounds like you just were born into the mining industry, but do you actually believe in the importance of gold?
I do. I'm not like some of the gold bugs that are, this is going to be the final store of wealth, but it is something that I know. It's something that I understand how to explore for, and how to market and the geology around. So, you should stick to what you're good at. And I've been doing it for most of my life. And yes, I've been involved in companies that have other metals and, copper and zinc and silver, but really gold has been what I've worked on the most. But I also am a really big believer in the mining industry in general and how much we contribute to society and how much we can give back. And really, in the Yukon where we're working, the mining industry has been a long part of the history, and seeing the benefits that are able to come to communities from mining, that also drives me as much as finding gold. Yes, I collect gold nuggets, and yes, I like the yellow metal, but I also like, and it's partly also that thrill of the chase. Exploration and is really an adventure in testing yourself and your science, and going out and testing it and developing it. It's a great business.
Yeah. So you said you're pretty prudent with the shareholders' money, and you're a rather large shareholder yourself. Last time I checked, roughly around 5%. And today you guys just announced, well, prior you mentioned a $16 million private placement, and today you just had the first tranche. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so almost 12 million we raised. We have one more closing, which will be probably 10 days from now or so, to finalize the financing. But you'll notice there's a pretty significant insider contribution between my husband and I. We've put in close to $500,000 into this most recent financing because I wanted to maintain my percentage. But when you get good shareholders in a financing, you want to make sure you make room for them as well, because some of them have different investment criteria where they need a minimum amount and based on your liquidity and all the rest of that. So we're very excited about the shareholders that we're bringing in, and really where this financing positions us. We're now funded through 2023 with a very aggressive program this year and all through 2022. That I think will help us really significantly advance AurMac and remove the overhang from people waiting for financing before they buy the stock, because there's going to be a very long time now. We're going to be able to put out a lot of results and advance AurMac and Banyan very significantly.
Right. For the young speculators out there, can you explain this situation for them where the private placement, the share price is actually more than the current share price? What does that mean? Is there any significance behind that?
Well, that's a lot of placements you see are actually at a discount. Usually shareholders demand a 10% discount, sometimes a warrant. We held pretty firm on both our price and the fact that we weren't going to issue a warrant in this financing. And and I think people appreciate that we're pretty thinly traded. We don't have a lot of liquidity, and so our share price changes on not a huge volume or value of stock. So how do you value your private placement? And I think that long term, it's a great deal for the investors, and it's a great deal for the other shareholders as well. In that we've been able to attract shareholders that see the value in Banyan.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare, though. I know lots of people have commented on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to not see warrants and options as well, because I've got burnt a couple of times with those, not understanding them as a newer investor. So it's nice to see.
Well, and not having the warrants, often people hold then their shares in a private placement, and then they sell their original investment 4 months and a day later or somewhere around there, and then they hold the warrants, which is really tough on a company because that those shareholders have really only purchased for that 4 month time period, and then they intend to hold their warrants, and then often you see the share price affected. So if you can get shareholders that are long-term holders of your story and might even go and buy in the market rather than to add to their position, rather than be selling in 4 months,
Yeah.
that really changes your long-term capital structure.
Yeah, for sure. And part of this private placement, you mentioned that you might commence a PEA, pre-economic assessment. Do you mind talking about the economics of this deposit?
Sure. Well, we haven't done an economic assessment yet, but
Hmm.
the best way to really consider what an economic grade and what the economics of AurMac would be to look at our neighbor, because Victoria Gold, they finance their project, which has a similar grade, same age of mineralization, similar to what we envision being a open pit heap leach mine. And we're closer to the primary infrastructure than Victoria Gold was when they built. So they had quite a bit of cost for putting in their power lines, the substation, improving roads, which we wouldn't have. Which you roughly could look at the cost of what inflation might be between then. So that might be a consideration. But overall, they raised $500 million for the original construction of Eagle. They're a 200,000 ounce producer now, and have very significant cash flows at this current gold price. All of their economics are well documented of their all-in sustaining costs and their cash costs. So, that's a great example of what the cost could be for a project like AurMac. And, we can't say those will be the costs until we actually do our
Yeah.
PEA, but we plan to put out our resource in 2022 and start our PEA in 2022 as well. So, you want to make sure you get a significant enough resource, which we think we're well on track for. I think in the Yukon, you need a minimum of 2 million ounces before you do a PEA or before a project is standalone. And then everything beyond that, either improves the economics or long term, I think very similar to Victoria Gold, we have a lot of blue sky opportunity on our property beyond 2 million ounces.
For sure. Yeah, you guys have been doing a lot of drilling, and I kind of want to get into this a bit. The grams per ton, and if you could explain grams per ton to meter ratio for the younger people out there, because you might see 1.49 grams per ton over 40 meters, and then you might see some other exploration company with like 19 grams per ton over 1 meter. So could you
Right.
explain that?
So, the type of project that we're looking at is open pit heap leach mining. So the ground is excavated and then put on a heap leach pad and cyanide go through it. Lots of projects are mined different ways. You either mine them underground and then you take them to a mill, which, there's very different economics in the two in terms of capital costs, but also mining. So if you're dealing with narrow high grade, like your 19 over 1 meter, it's very hard to mine 1 meter. So you always have dilution, because you need to, mine over the width of your equipment, at least, and it varies for different mines but anything under 2 meters is probably not mineable. So you can't mine 1 meter. That's just not possible. So
Hmm.
when you're thinking about those projects, you also have to think about depth, costs for underground mining, and when you're looking at a heap leach mine, it's a very different process, and because all of it goes onto the heap leach pad. So Victoria Gold's life of mine, which is showing that it's economic, is 0.63, which is obviously much less than 9. So
Yeah.
that's kind of our target, is to be very similar to our nearest neighbor, which was shown to be economic to build and for mining. You can also look at other heap leach projects like Fort Knox. Their average grade for quite a while was 0.25 that they were putting on the heap leach pad, and they were making money at that. So it's a volume game when you're dealing with lower grades, and a strip ratio game, which is the other key thing, is how much dilution will you have and how much material do you have to move for each ounce of gold, which is another really key piece. It's not just grade. Lots of high grade projects will never be mined and aren't economic.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the in-depth example, or
No
appreciate it.
problem.
And how about, you're an exploration company, and during COVID-19, there was a lot of backlog on the labs. Are you guys getting timely lab results?
So last year was really challenging. We were, some of them were at 2 months, sometimes down to a month. We were happy. This year we started early in February, and we had 20-day turnarounds for the first while, probably because we were one of the few companies delivering samples to the lab.
Yeah.
We're at about 35 days right now, and we're worried that it's going to get pushed beyond that. So we're working hard with the lab to try and make sure we continue to get good turnarounds. It's really important. It's for our planning. We could probably get by with 2 months turnarounds because we have so many targets. We don't need our drill results back like some projects do to be able to plan our next holes. We have a wealth of targets, and that's why we're about to ramp up to 2 drills, and then hopefully shortly followed by 3 drills. And we have more than enough targets without having to worry about our drill results.
Perfect. And what about forest fires up in the Yukon? Because here in Thunder Bay, there's been a ton. It's been a record year for forest fires. How's it on the west coast?
Well, the whole BC coast is dry as well, including the Yukon. So, a few of the things that we have going for us is our camp and our drilling is right by major infrastructure. So there's already lots of linear fire breaks, including the the power line, the main highway, which the governments are going to want to make sure they keep roads and power. So there's going to be additional support should there be something there. We also had a fire right near on our sort of northern and western boundary 2 years ago, which came right up to part of our property. It's fairly near our camp actually, and our airstrip deposit. So a pre-existing burn acts as a fire break as well. So gives us a bit of a break. A lot of our main areas where we're doing exploration is really swampy. Even though it's been dry, we still have lots of swampy conditions there because of the moss holds the water in it. So we're not too concerned about forest fires. We also would do our own structure protection, and we've taken a few precautions to be ready should that need arise. But so far, there's nothing near us.
Okay. Thank you for that. So you mentioned the different types of mining and different types of bodies of ore. Why should a speculator look at an exploration company that's planning an open pit heap leach mine and not an underground mine or other methods? Why should we be interested in this, a low grade mine?
Well, because for example, the Yukon, you can permit a heap leach mine in the Yukon. Some of the other types of mines require where ore is refractory, they would need a mill and power, and the environmental impacts are different than their potential environmental than for a heap leach mine. So there's a real benefit in the Yukon where heap leach mining is a known technology. Communities familiar with it, and it's shown that bulk tonnage can be economic. So, every deposit needs to be evaluated on where it is locationally. If you're a deposit that needs to ship large quantities of ore, you need to be close to a highway so that, you don't have to build huge amounts of high quality road to ship that out. So every type of mine has different things that you need to think about. So I don't think you can, carte blanche say, why look at a heap leach versus a hard rock, but for this specific location, for the type of deposit we have, because ours is right from surface. If it had a large strip ratio and your first mineralization wasn't till 200 meters, that would be a very different scenario, because low grade at a big strip ratio doesn't work, but we don't. So you need to take all the different factors that go into the economics of running a mine and consider them as a whole. when you're evaluating a mine
Thank you
and
for
in
that.
what's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And your neighbors see the potential in it too. They're shareholders. You're not the only large shareholder. You have Lexco and Victoria Gold. For the listeners out there that haven't done their due diligence yet on that whole area, why don't you go ahead and talk about how big of a mine Victoria Gold actually is, and how close are they to you, like relationship wise and distance wise?
Sure. So, Victoria Gold is actually one of our major shareholders at around 8%, along with our other mining neighbor, which is Alexco, and they're a high-grade silver mine. Victoria Gold and Alexco both became shareholders from the property acquisition deal that we did on AurMac, as well as they've both put in equity. So not only did they entrust us with their property, but they have since contributed equity, participating in almost all of our financing. So um, I think that really shows that they both believe in our technical team, that they entrusted the property to us, and they've put in equity, and they believe in the project. So Victoria Gold, a 200,000 ounce producer, financed and started construction in 2018, reached commercial production in July 1st of 2020, despite COVID, which, that added a lot of cost right at the most
Right.
difficult time in a mine build when you're at maximum debt, and yet they have come through and showing that it's profitable and they're cash flowing. So they also have announced that they plan to go from being a 200,000 ounce producer to a 250 or 300,000 ounce producer. I think in the next few years. I can't remember what the current target was for the 3,000 ounces. I thought it was 2023 for the 250,000 ounces. But that's a very significant producer. And when you look at their exploration potential on the property, I believe that mine's going to run for 20 years. So that this area with Victoria Gold and then Alexco, which is very high grade silver, millions of ounces of silver, I believe it's the newest mining district in Canada, and it will be a very significant contributor to not only the Yukon's economy, but Canada's. So
Hmm.
great place to be. Best place to find a mine is right next to another one in a newly developing district.
Yeah, I was watching Victoria Gold's 8 minute mine tour, and what did the CEO said it's the second largest employer of the Yukon now, which is I thought was pretty impressive, next to the government.
Yeah, well, and look at how Yukon's economy fared through COVID, and mining was an essential service through COVID, and
Hmm.
so Victoria Gold continued to be, a very significant employer and contributor to all the businesses. And I was up in the Yukon last week, and a lot of the suppliers expressed that to me, how important it was that Victoria Gold kept so many businesses afloat in a really difficult time.
Yeah, I agree. So when I look at an exploration company like Banyan, I like seeing the possibility of merger and acquisition, but how
Mhm.
do you vision this company going? Do you see it going through and through, being its own entity or partnering with
I
Victoria
think the
Gold?
most value for shareholders, and that's how I think, how am I going to generate the most value for shareholders? And that's partly why we did this financing is, yes, M&A is a potential. Victoria Gold, as they grow, is going to look for additional resources to upscale their operations beyond their own core. Same with Alexco, and same with my other big shareholder, Cisco Development. They know the value of heap leach projects. They've built and been involved in lots of them. And then, of course, Core in the mix with their recent investment
Right.
into Victoria Gold, purchasing that 17% stake, that adds some excitement to the district because there's going to be lots of eyeballs on the district with the thought that there will be some M&A activity at Victoria Gold. So, and they have to drive right through our property to get there, and we're adding ounces very, very quickly. Already with this financing, we plan to really advance adding ounces, and we're focusing on adding ounces, not infilling, because we want people to see how big it is. We think that the AurMac proper part of our property, just between airstrip, power line, and what we call Oryx Hill, has the potential for 3 to 5 million ounces. And I think we get the greatest value by getting that resource up as fast as we can, which is why we're planning this very aggressive 2-year drill program. And for me, I'm quite happy to take this project, continue down the line, take it through building the resource, the PEA, feasibility study, into permitting. That's all stuff that I know and feel very confident I can deliver value on for shareholders. Should it be the right course and I get the opportunity to actually say, I think Banyan should build this, we'll find the management team that has the skill sets to do that. That really is a different skill set. And I'm a 5% shareholder, so I'm going to make sure that I care and find the right people to do that. However, with the amount of excitement that's going on related to a new district, the talk of M&A at Victoria Gold, then that's partly why I'm driven to this aggressive drill program, is because we need to be big enough so our shareholders actually realize the value of what we have at Banyan. And I think 2 million ounces is a critical number in the Yukon. If you have over 2 million ounces, your project has the potential to be an economic standalone project. And I specifically believe that for a heap leach project right where we're located. So, we need to exceed that by early 2022. And I think our shareholders are well positioned now with this financing. We won't have that financing overhang until 2023, which gives us a lot of runway to add value.
Perfect. I agree. I like learning more about the people on the show too. And I see on your corporate presentation, there's an ESG component. And it's nice and all. It's just one little slide though, and I don't think it does it justice. So why don't you go ahead and talk about your personal involvement in the communities as well as Banyan's?
Great. Well, I've been working in the Yukon. Well, my father took me to the Yukon when I was 8. So, spent a lot of time working in communities, being involved with various charities and training opportunities. And then about 10 years ago, with my husband, John, we started the Every Student Every Day Fund. We learned about the challenges in education in the Yukon and the fact that there were some appalling statistics with kids not making it to school. 53% average attendance. If you miss 20 days of school, then you miss a whole year of school by the time you get to high school. And if you continue on that, you miss two whole years before you graduate. And the average was 53 days missed. So no wonder we don't have kids that can read and write and take up the great jobs, which are in all sectors, from government to, if we can't get kids to school. And so there's many systemic problems which are contributing to this. Everything from some of the issues around reconciliation to family situations, socioeconomics, and it really spans the whole spectrum of socioeconomics. And Canada's not, and Yukon's not alone. Our statistics are a little bit worse than some other jurisdictions in Canada, but this is a first world problem. And so we thought, and I've trained enough people over the years that haven't had the basic skills to go into the apprenticeships or other programs that I've wanted to get them into, advance them in their careers, that we thought we need to start to address this. And it's a long-term problem. It's kind of like turning a freighter on the ocean. It's not for the faint of heart, kind of like mining and exploration. We started, 10 years ago, we could barely raise $20,000 for the cause, and then we'd get 20,000 matched from the government. Well, a month ago, we gave out $150,000 for projects in September, helping to deal with not only the existing problem, but it'll be exacerbated with COVID. And in the last 10 years, we've given out over $1.2 million and funded over 140 projects, schools, First Nations, community groups, all helping to solve this problem. So I'm very passionate about that issue, as you can tell. I'm also involved in various other charities and have been over the years in the Yukon, because I think that the mining industry, and it has been a leader. You go into the White Horse Hospital and look at all the service and supply and mining companies which have supported that. They really are leaders in giving back to communities and financially supporting communities. So pretty passionate about that. Do lots of training initiatives. I'm working on something right now, which we hope to also include the local First Nation in our training program. And yeah, it's really an exciting part and so important now. And yes, we only have one slide, and there are occasionally investors now and more than before who really ask lots of tough questions about ESG. And that's the social part. The environmental part's also very important. Our environmental standards and being seen to do things right, safety, training, equity, having diversity in our workforce, which we're working hard to continually do. And then, of course, your whole governance, transparency, financial accountability, all of those aspects are really important for us at Banyan. And we're trying to make sure that we're fulfilling our moral obligations to the community as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a growing importance, and it's kind of frustrating when you just see every single company has the same ESG slide, and you're like, oh, come on, but
Well, and
some
it's really
really do
hard
make a big
because
difference.
not every community are you going to be able to do the same things. So
That's
what
true.
one exploration company does doesn't work in another, and they don't want that. So it is going to be really hard as an investor to evaluate different ESG programs and what companies are doing. My approach is it's not how big the check is, it's how much effort and how much impact you can have with it. Really getting involved in knowing the community and trying to find a niche where you can meaningfully help. It's easy to just sponsor things, but then there's the how are we actually helping to contribute to a better long-term society.
Hmm. So you're obviously passionate about this subject. I like it.
Absolutely.
Do you think, you being a woman CEO in this male-dominated industry, do you think there's another advantage there to any part of the business?
Um, well, I know I'm a good multitasker, and that sometimes people attribute to being a woman. But I think there are people who do invest in female-owned companies. I'm not sure that that's enough of an advantage. I like to think that I'm good at what I do, and whether I was male or female, people would look at our company as a whole and the project, and make their investment decisions based on that. Do I think it's a great business for a woman? Absolutely. I've had a great career. I've worked in all kinds of different aspects of it, and there are so many that we've got some great women who are working for us, and yeah, there are some more difficult businesses I think for women than mining. That's
Yeah. So
yeah.
for women, or I guess just young people in general, how do they climb up the ladder from employee to management or management to corporate? Like if they have the drive, any tips for them?
I started right at the bottom. I had to learn all the basic skills, and the real benefit of that is I would know when a job's being done right. And you also have that humbleness of knowing what you're asking somebody else to do, and knowledge that you would do it yourself. You're not asking them to do something you wouldn't do or haven't done. And I think it also lets you understand better for timing and scheduling. So and if you're going to work in the mining and the geology side, you really need field experience, and try to get as broad experience as you can, because that really, it's amazing what you see in different places and what you learn. I think that's something that you should really do. But there's a lot of ancillary businesses too. If you don't want to be a field-based person, there's work in the permitting and the environmental side and the community side. It's a really broad scoped business. And when I first went into it, I didn't know if I'd be in management or where I would be, or in exploration geology. And I sort of worked my way up and learned a little bit more and found out what I had the aptitude for. But there's lots of opportunity. So, find something that I always say that I truly love what I do. So I don't think about it as a job when I wake up in the morning. And if you get a job where you see people that like mark their hours down and how much money they've made on a day, it's like, if you're wasting all that energy on that, you're probably not in the right job. Because if you work hard and you've got passion about what you do, you usually get returns commensurate with the effort that you put in. And why waste the extra time worrying about that? So I get up at 4 a.m. many days because I'm excited about what's going on, and have stuff to do. So but I don't think about it as I have to get up at 4 a.m.
Hmm. Well, that's drive. I don't. Thanks, Tara. This has been great. We have a recurrent segment though. It's called the Vault, and it's only going to be available on my website for now. It won't be available on YouTube. I just have it on Apple Podcast, Spotify. If you like what you hear though, subscribe and like this video on YouTube. But let's get into the Vault. It's just mentorship like questions. I
Okay,
asked three
great.
of them. So in the Vault.